Welcome to American Society of Indian Engineers and Architects September seminar. Thank you all for coming. Look at the crowd today. We have a very elegant crowd today. So thank you all for coming. I am Naresh Kohli with Geotest Engineering, and I am the current president of American Society of Indian Engineers. It has been a very successful year so far with the help of all the members and corporate members, and we have life members and student members. Thank you all for your support. We are growing a stronger organization in the greater Houston area. We have about 250 members right now, and then we are growing stronger. So please, request your friends and colleagues to join ASI and support. We are doing some of the very good things are like we have several technical seminars this year, very good seminars. We had a record number of turnout this year. Some of the events, we had to say the events were sold out, so sorry for that. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is.
So. And then a couple of quick announcements before we start the actual program. So we have our scholarship program announced. So the requirements are on the website. So please do encourage your kids and then colleagues for the students to apply for the scholarships. We have a very successful event in May, so we raised funds for the scholarship. Thanks to all the supporters and the sponsors. And also we have our Diwali event coming up. It's actually a holiday event. We're going to combine the Thanksgiving and Diwali. So it's on the November 11th. So please mark your calendars, Friday. Today we have a very special topic. Oh, the Diwali event venue is at the India House. Today we have a very special topic, and this is not only affects our life, our daily life, but also our professional life too. If we get this project going, we have a lot of jobs coming up. It's going to boost the economy of the greater Houston area. So there has been a lot of excitement for this project. Just now, like before the starting of the event, there was one of the investment banker. He showed up for the event. He saw it on the Eventbrite, and he said, "I'm interested to show for the project." So that's why I came. But he had to leave early. But he came and stayed for like half an hour and then talked about the project.
Did you get the check?
So, and also I heard that our 41st president, Mr. Bush Sr., is 92 years old and he wants to hop on the first train. Right. So let's make a project happen.
Right.
So I want to thank Mr. Mosley for his efforts. And then moving forward, this is the project. So I hope this project will be a success. Now I request our past president and council member, Raj Baswaraj, to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Naresh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Well, it is my distinct honor to introduce our guest speaker tonight. Depending on the day, you can call him judge or commissioner or or the biggest advocate for mobility in the Houston region. So thank you for everything you do, sir. So real quick, well, first of all, I know that the judge is not, he's a big fan of technology, right? So I do one thing first thing in the morning. I print your bio, and I print it in a nice big font, and I print it to the printer. I'm like, okay, I'm like 8 hours ahead of schedule here, right, but I leave it on the printer when I got here. So I'm going to use a little bit of, something that you like, which is technology. to use to introduce. Well, we could be here all night because he definitely has a very long bio, but he wants to keep it short. But I don't want to miss anything that's important because I think it's very important for all of us here in this room, and of course a lot of people out there know this, as to who is actually at the charge and leading this very important project. So I am going to take my time to introduce you. So Mr. Jeff Mosley has been Senior Vice President of Texas Central Partners LLC since July of this year. And before that, as many of you know, he served as the Commissioner of the Texas Transportation Commission for 4 years, from 2012 to 2016. And before that, Mr. Mosley served as the Chief Executive Officer and President of one of the marquee organizations in town, which is Greater Houston Partnership, for 7 long years. And thank you for your leadership there. And prior to joining the partnership, Mr. Mosley served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Office of Governor for Economic Development and Tourism for 2 years. And he was the Executive Director there for 4 years as well. And before joining the governor's office, that's where his judge title comes from, Mr. Mosley was elected to 3 terms as Denton County Judge, and during his tenure, he helped to reduce taxes while overseeing one of the nation's fastest growing counties, and he collaborated with business and industry leaders, steering the county towards its first $27 million. We're talking back in the late $90, guys, road and bridge bond package. And he also successfully lobbied Wall Street to raise Denton County's bond rating, pioneered increasing the homestead exemption for seniors, and worked to pass a bond package for a new court and juvenile jail facility. Wow, a lot of things. And then there's on and on and on. I know you were Chief of Staff for Lenny Hall, but one thing I do want to say that under your leadership, sir, Texas won the coveted Governor's Cup Award for Site Selection Magazine, so thank you for that. And I know that you graduated from Southern Nazarene University. I'm not going to give away the year, because I know you're still young at heart. And just so you all know, Mr. Mosley does speak Hindi, probably better than some of us in this room. So, without further ado, I'll give you
Thank you, Council Member. And I guess it would be appropriate to open with Namaskar. Good to see everybody here this evening. What a delight to be with you. Sam, thank you so much for working to make this invitation possible. And what a delight to be here to talk about a wonderful project. I think you talked a little bit about it, Naresh, how big this is, but it's really a wonderful, big idea. And before I get into that, I wanted to make sure everybody knew that one of my colleagues is here, Maya Ford. She's traveling here with me this evening, and so, yeah. Feel free to get acquainted with her. She's helping us with communications, and that's one of the opportunities we have. And may I just be so bold as to say we would welcome not only a chance to share this presentation with you tonight, but at one of your future meetings, perhaps you would consider a resolution of support for the project. So that's, quite frankly, why we're very, very pleased to be here this evening. What a delight also, not only to see the council member here, but also I saw Sanjay Ram here from the Metro Board. He's a wonderful leader of our community. And I had breakfast with Ramesh Gunda this morning, head of the Mayor's Transportation Transition Committee. So wonderful leaders in our community. Thank you for providing such strong leadership in this area of transportation. So without further ado, may I talk a little bit about this initiative. In 1988, Jackie and I made our first trip to India. And India was strikingly different in 1988 than it is today. Would you agree? In fact, do you know back in 1988, India made its own Coca-Cola? Yes. And India made its own automobiles. Since that time, of course, it's a free economy, an open economy, and so the country really doesn't represent what we saw in 1988. I've been back recently. I went with Judge Emmett. We were talking to Mahindra, Jagdeep Palawaliya, to help organize that through the Indo-American Chamber. Wasn't that a nice gala the other night? That was always wonderful, especially nice this year. But what a delight to go back to India and see how much it's changed. But then I started thinking about Texas. And may I tell you that Texas isn't the same today than it was 25 years ago. And so the big idea and the project that we're going to visit with you about today really does fit through the lens of how will Texas utilize this mobility, this conveyance system, not only today, but 25 years into the future. Because I think we all know that Houston 25 years ago basically resembled the Houston we know today. And the Houston we know today will not even look like the Houston of 25 years in the future. That's because we have a population explosion. And we're going to be growing from 27 million as a state to 40 million over this next 25, 30, 35 year segment of time. So a huge demand for capacity. And when I served on TxDOT, we, of course, the 5 of us would sit up there and we would look at our annual operating budget of $12 billion, and there was never enough money. And we, the voters, we approved Proposition 1, which meant that we could take some of the money before it went to the rainy day fund, and we could use some of that money for roadways. And then we, the voters, also approved Proposition 7, and that allowed us to capture some money from fees, from motor vehicles and sales tax. And that replenished and gave us some more money, but there's still not enough money. Why? Because there's this demand for capacity on our mobility system. So now we're driving around Houston, and we notice a lot of out-of-state license plates, don't we? A lot of out-of-state license plates. And that means the word is out. The secret's out. This is a great place to live. It's a great place to get ahead. And so we see a lot of in-migration, people voting with their feet. And we take that as a compliment, but it also means that this is very clearly a demand for more capacity. What is the value of a mobility system, of a roadway? It's capacity. And I used a very highly technical term when I'd set up on the commission. I'd say a roadway is like the garden hose in our backyard. And when that garden hose, you're watering, and all of a sudden it gets a crimp, it loses its capacity, and we have to stop what we're doing and go and open up the watering hose so we can begin watering again. When we're driving on a roadway and it stops, it loses its value to our society, doesn't it? Because it's doing much more than it was ever designed to do. It's got too much demand for capacity. And so that's the real challenge we face in Texas, is that we have so much more new demand for capacity. With population explosion, the new shipping lane in Panama is going to add more tonnage, more freight haul. Do you see more trucks on our roadways? That's not your imagination. There are more trucks and growing on our roadways. And thank you very much, Panama. The tonnage is going to go up on all of our Gulf ports. This is good for Texas, but it also means there's more demand for capacity. Fracking means there's not enough pipelines. How do we move crude to the refineries along our Gulf Coast? Again, it gets to the freight haul, trucks. That's another demand for capacity. And the fourth one is a little bit of a sleeper. We don't always think about it. We don't think with this side of our brain always. But the economy of Mexico is very robust, and it's continuing to grow. And economists are telling us that, like India's economy that's going up, Mexico is in the news a lot of times for social challenges, but they haven't stopped in reforming their economy. They've had reforms in education, reforms in oil and gas, and they've had more free trade agreements than any other nation in the world. And so economists say in 30 years the peso will be stronger than the euro. The peso will be stronger than the euro. In other words, the economy of Mexico will be stronger than Germany's economy, because Germany is the euro, right? So that means more and more trade. And Houston is a central hub, logistics hub, and that's more demand for capacity. So we've got these 4 mega trends. Any one of those 4 would be extremely significant. So along comes this idea of a bullet train. And there was a lot of interest in the bullet train before we came along. Some of you might remember there was a time back in the 80s when the bullet train was pursued, and there was a French train called TGV, and John Conley was involved in that. But guess who didn't like it? Southwest Airlines. And why didn't Southwest Airlines like the bullet train? Because their model was the short haul. And their model was based on a federal law that was called the Wright Amendment. And the Wright Amendment protected Love Field and kept Southwest Airlines into a protected marketplace. Well, the Wright Amendment went away recently, and so Southwest Airlines has changed its model. It's no longer a short-haul carrier. It's a long-haul carrier. And we know, because we live in Houston, it's an international carrier. And we also know it's not a discount carrier. I mean, it's a bona fide air carrier. And so they're not threatened by the fact that we would come in now, again, and look at this connectivity between Houston to Dallas. So think about Houston and Dallas. We've got 6 million people living in our region and approximately 6 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we've got Interstate 45. So we just talked about the 4 demands for capacity. And so this is the context for some of the slides that I want to show you to give you an introduction to Texas Central Partners, which is the company that is bringing this concept forward. It's a private sector opportunity to provide connectivity by a bullet train. Okay, Naresh, are you going to do the honors? Yeah. Okay, let me step out of the way, make sure. So, you know, Texas does big things. I like that slide right here because it shows some of the big ideas that have come out of the entrepreneurship that have grown in our state. I have a question to ask the engineers and contractors of this audience. What was the very last significantly large infrastructure project in the state of Texas? And we have to think a while, don't we? It's been a while. And we Houstonians, we like to think about, well, you know, Port of Houston, that's a big one. That wasn't recent. And Astrodome, that was one of these big ideas, but that's been a while. But the answer that I've been told, is DFW Airport. Dallas-Fort Worth Airport was the last significantly large infrastructure initiative in the state. And that's been a wonderful jewel, hasn't it? And it's continued to grow, and I think it was about $700 million when it was built, and now it's, I don't know, the replacement cost is probably $5–6 billion, but it's a wonderful asset for the state. That's been the last time. So we're coming tonight with another big idea, and we would agree that it's time for Texas to go ahead and embrace another opportunity for infrastructure. Here's a photograph of this big idea. This is a piece of Japanese equipment. It's called the Shinkansen 700. It's the 7th generation bullet train in Japan. This high-speed conveyance system started in 1964 when Tokyo hosted the World's Olympics. And it's been operating for more than half a century. No accidents, no deaths. So this is the technology that we're bringing. That's not a Texas mountain, by the way. But it gives you an idea. At 200 miles an hour, our system will have 400 seats. It'll be about 700 feet in length. So this conveyance system will run from Houston to Dallas. It is an electric train. It will allow us to take a lot of vehicles off the highway. Remember, we talked about the challenge of capacity on our roadways? Well, this is a correct answer to that. And it's very environmentally sound. So the footprint reduces carbon emissions, and it's supported by the environmental community. This conveyance system is not dependent on the weather. We talked about that a little bit at our table. But you can get on this conveyance system, and you don't have to worry about sitting on the runway for 20 minutes or an hour waiting for the weather to clear somewhere else. This conveyance system will move immediately on time. So it operates, as we said, at 200 miles per hour. Our system will have 3 stations, one here in Houston. It will be near the 290, I-10, 610 area. There are 3 sites there that are being considered. There's another proposed station in Brazos Valley, we call it, so it'd be situated near Texas A&M. Do we have any Aggies in the room? Okay, thank you. And so A&M's, I think their enrollment now is 55,000. Guess what the other university is on Highway 30? Sam Houston State, and their enrollment's about 40,000. So Brazos Valley Station will serve these academic communities. The next stop will be Dallas. So this is a 90-minute trip. Houston, stop, Dallas, 90 minutes, and running at 200 miles an hour. Trains can leave every 30 minutes. So imagine again, we have 400 seats in each one of the departures, and we can run up to 30-minute intervals. So it's going to take a lot of automobiles off of I-45. These photographs give you an idea of some of the different styles. It's real interesting to see this, coming into an urban setting, the development around that, but in Japan, these trains run through highly dense populated areas with office buildings, and people are functioning right next to the track system. And then you can see how it interfaces with intersections, with highways. This viaduct is going to be used extensively. The rail system will be elevated. It will not be at grade. When you run a railroad at 200 miles an hour, you want to be above the ground, because you don't want to be having the safety issues. Imagine how much issues we have just with freight trains and having to close off a roadway to get a freight train through, and it's not safe, and it causes congestion, and it stacks up and closes roadways. So we're not going to be closing any roadways. And the other benefit of that is, going through the rural areas, you can see easily where farm equipment and livestock can pass easily underneath that. And a rancher told me the other day, this area right in here, livestock can even shelter in place. So in the heat of the summer or in the cold of winter, we're building and providing a shelter for wildlife and livestock. There are going to be some berms that will be used, and so that gives you an idea of what a berm would look like. But if you build a berm, you've got to go excavate, you've got to find a lot of soil to put in place. So this is going to be more commonly used, the viaduct system. And that just is another idea, shows you how the viaduct looks as it passes through an intersection. And the berm as we talk. So as we come into Houston, what would be an opportunity for the high-speed train to enter our urban area? Well, this is an artist's rendition. And you can't see this little graphic here, but they're saying Hempstead Road. The city of Dallas, whenever they annexed Hempstead, took possession of Hempstead Road. So this is where we're talking with the city about how we could share right-of-way. And again, we elevate our track. We're used to that in Houston because as Metro Board member Sanjay would say, we have elevated HOV lanes. We see them as we drive around, so this is a version of that. But you could put a commuter rail underneath that. You can have your bullet train on top. Now, we won't share tracks for safety reasons. This train, again, has been operating in Japan for more than half a century without an accident or a death, so it has extreme safety. But this gives you an idea of how you could put a high-speed rail and a commuter train in the same right-of-way along the Hempstead corridor. So the benefits that would come to Texas are pretty amazing. When we look at this project, imagine running a conveyance system 7 days a week around the clock, where you're going to need a lot of employees to keep this sophisticated machinery running. But these are high-tech jobs. And there'll be, we're projecting at least 1,000 full-time jobs that are once operational. And then this is talking about a $10 billion investment. May I tell you that's a conservative projection. It's most likely going to be closer to 15 billion, and maybe even beyond that. But it's a significant investment. $15 billion will go into infrastructure, design, construction, and then the projection off of a $10 billion investment is that the direct impact. People that come in and get hired to do the work There's a $36 billion direct impact over the next 25 years. So when we go in and build this elevated viaduct, that's going into the ground. It's a private sector investment, and that goes on the tax roll. So the tax assessor goes out there and appraises the value of that just like they would a commercial, any type of a commercial structure. So we start paying taxes because we're a private sector investment, and the projected tax revenues would be $2.5 billion. This goes to counties and to school districts and municipalities. Still, it comes back to we, the taxpayers, that live along this zone. Now, for example, Grimes County, we talked about the Brazos Valley Station, that's in Grimes County. We're projecting that'll be approximately $1 billion. The total assessed valuation of Grimes County today, I think, is about $4 billion. Can you imagine how much the taxpayers of Grimes County will enjoy having $1 billion added to their valuation, where they can collect revenues for their city, their county, and their school districts? And a lot of the school districts along this zone, we're going through 8 rural counties. A lot of them, I'd say a lot, about half of them perhaps, are receiving money from the state. So it's possible that as we go in and make this improvement, that they can become a donor district, which is good for the entire state. They don't have to be receiving monies, all right? Okay, more choice. We talked about less congestion. And talked about this already, Naresh, population. So reliable, convenient, comfortable, productive. The system is very sophisticated in that if you're running every 30 minutes, for example, and you wake up in the morning and go, I need to go to Dallas for business. You can be there in 90 minutes. You go to the train station and you walk on the train. You've got your technology in your pocket. You can pay for your ticket. The technology is even being designed that you could go ahead and pay for your Uber to pick you up. So you just do it in one. It's just that's the way the platform can operate. You get to Dallas, you miss that train, you sit back and have a coffee at the train station. You catch the next one 30 minutes later. You walk on. Your ticketing's already paid for. So we think this is a big opportunity to get people out of their cars, because it is strikingly different from what we have to go through today to go to the airport, to park our car, to go through security, to be there 1 hour in advance, sit in a plane that may or may not take off. I mean, there's a lot of striking differences in how we're going to provide transportation from the way some of the airlines are using or finding it. So variable pricing based on demand. That also means that for people that buy their tickets way in advance, there's going to be some severe discounts. Families can plan vacations and enjoy discounts. All the seating on the train is business class seating. It's all ADA. You can run a wheelchair from one end of the train to the other. There is a discussion, Sanjay, about turning the seats, like the train, when it pulls into the station and then it goes back the other direction. I think they're designing the seats where you can turn them to face the direction you're going. We'll see how that all works, but it's going to be extremely comfortable. Of course, lots of Wi-Fi, so you'll have a chance to do work while you're traveling.
It takes them a few seconds to turn them around.
How many?
A few seconds, like 20 seconds.
20 seconds to turn a train?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was there, I turned around and I looked back, they were all turned. I didn't even realize that they turned them around.
Jackie and I took the girls about a year ago to Russia for our vacation, and we rode the bullet train from St. Petersburg to Moscow. And there were several stops along the way, and I thought, well, I don't know how you can be a bullet train with all these stops. The stops were 2 minutes. So I guess the culture of bullet train is, if you know you're getting on, you're ready to get on. And if you know you're getting off, you get off, because it's a 2-minute stop. So there's a different, it's like a very precise time machine, you know, to get on and off these high-speed conveyances. Okay, Naresh. Okay. So anyway, this is just kind of summarizing Texans investing in this big idea. We have Texans that have stepped up. This is a private sector initiative. We're not asking for any federal subsidies. It's really a little bit of confusing to go into some of these discussions because we, the public, we automatically assume that if it's about mobility, it's a public sector project. And here you have the private sector that have gone to 30 cities and looked at routing, and they said the Houston-Dallas is the one we know is the one we want to take a risk on. So they're on their third ridership study. This is the one where they have the highest degree of confidence anywhere in America. The topography is very amenable. Again, you've got a $500 billion economy down here and a $500 billion economy up there. You know, I-45, Burlington Northern, and a high power grid in place. So we're going to be adjacent to a high power grid. We have an electric train. And so we'll go forward with selling bonds to the private sector. The private sector will assume all of the risk and will not seek any subsidies from the government. So that's a little different way of looking at mobility. Now, we think that our project will also be a stimulus and launch this whole area of high speed. The federal government's looking at some routes now. One of the routes is from Oklahoma City to Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, down to Laredo to Monterey. And then there's another one from Houston to New Orleans to Atlanta. But once this trunk of the tree is in place, we think that a lot of the branches are going to be stimulated. And you might even see the private sector step up and say, hey, we see how the private sector invested in this routing. We see the value of going forward and doing it on some of these other proposed routes. But this is a significant opportunity for the private sector to move the project forward very quickly. So we are in the process of pursuing regulatory approvals, and you can imagine that Federal Rail Administration has quite a bit to say about this project. There's an environmental impact that's being done, and we're going to get to a slide a little bit on some alignment here, but we are in the process of working with the federal government on regulations. We also are vigorously working with communities and making sure that questions that come up are answered. This is a big project, $15 billion project, and there's going to be a lot of questions. And so we feel like it's a great opportunity to get out there and talk about the values of this project. And I talked a little bit about some of the working with the feds. These are some regulatory milestones that we are contemplating this year. The rule of particular applicability and environmental impact statement, we expect them late this year. And when we get that, then we'll be able to say this is, in fact, the alignment. So right now, there are several lines on a map, but we know by the end of the year, we'll have one alignment that's been approved. So this just gives you an idea of some of the things that we are committed to. That is scoping meetings. We've been involved in about a dozen of those. We have more than 23 open houses. If you haven't attended one of those, we encourage you to go. It's a chance to come into a room bigger than this, and we've got stations. And somebody says, I want to know about, you know, the land that's being purchased. I want to know about the sound of the train. And so at each one of these, we have our team members that are professionals in that background. We're very pleased with how the open houses are serving to get information to the community, and then a range of speaking engagements. To the right, that's the various lines on the map from Harris County to Dallas County. There's a total of 10 counties. And so these different lines that are being looked at will be narrowed down to one single alignment at the end of this year when the EIS comes forward. Now, it is an electric train. My guess is, since there's already a high power grid through there, there's been a lot of environmental study about how that's, you know, impacting the environment. So there's going to be a good chance that we'll be very, very close to that same alignment. And then it just shows again this viaduct construction and how we use those standards. That map, just as a quick, you know, it's an aerial of Hempstead. It just shows a potential approach to the city of Houston, coming into the area that you'd be familiar with as Northwest Mall, kind of 610, I-10. But that is the alignment that's being looked at, and we're talking with City of Houston about how to team up with them on using their right of way. So, you know, we've been thinking, talking about a big idea and talking about, you know, the impact of this. I've heard somebody say the definition of a miracle is a compression of time. And that's what we've been talking about, taking a 4.5, 5-hour trip down to 90 minutes that you know it's going to be 90 minutes every day, every night, doesn't matter what the weather. And imagine how that changes the economy of our state, where we have a $1.5 trillion economy. Now we've got a conveyance system that really connects $1 trillion of that economy. And this is just an area of how development can happen, you know, around a station area. So we think about Houston, we think about Dallas, but do we think about Brazos Valley? Think about Runs Prairie and Shiro, where you're going to have a station. We're going to put about $1 billion in there. And so you could live in that area, and Kumar could go to Dallas in the morning, and I could go to Houston. We could meet back in Shiro for dinner that night. And that's just how different the world will be, because we'll have high-speed rail and all of the development that comes up around that station. So we encourage you to, you know, become more informed. You guys are out on the front lines. You're doing construction projects, and so there's opportunities to go to our website, get updates. And we thank you again for letting us come and just bring presentations and consider a resolution of support for the project. And this is what Maya is helping us do, is, you know, we know how to invite people to be advocates. There are going to be, when we come up on the legislative session in January, we're not asking the legislature for anything. Remember, we're not seeking any subsidies. Would you be surprised to know that there are people that want to tinker with our project, and they want to submit legislation that will somehow just change the way that we have it designed? Well, that's a reality, and that's what makes our country great, right? Everybody has a right to do that. So that's where we could use you as an advocate. And so if you feel comfortable going to this site and stating that you are formally an advocate, we welcome that, because we'll be able to go back to lawmakers and say, look, this has strong support throughout our community. What else, Naresh? I think that's it, right? So thank you so much for letting Maya and me come and bring this overview. And if Naresh allows, we might have a few minutes for questions.
Excuse me. So as we go to the security airports and the security check and all that, how with the security checks done over there for people?
Yeah, the question is, you know, there's so much homeland security at the airports. Why are the security going to be on the train? Well, there's going to be security on the train, and the entire corridor will fit into a federal secure zone. But that being said, it's going to be a lot easier to get on a train than it is to get on an airplane. So there will be security, but there's going to be technology that will make sure that passengers are safe. And remember what I said, where you can just kind of walk on the train. So there's opportunities to get on and off this conveyance system and enjoy the friendly nature of it and still have a secure conveyance system.
Did I hear you say you're going to have like an easy tag on our smartphones where we can just scan it and go in and out?
You know, the question is, can you just have an easy tag like on a smartphone? Probably it's something like that. I mean, the technology is advanced. We are going to be announcing a partner that's going to do the operations. When we announce that partner, everybody in this room is going to recognize that partner. This is somebody that's been very, very well versed in how to market and how to position and brand the product and work with passengers and make sure they have an experience that is a world-class experience. So we're going to be making that announcement later this year. Our technology partner, as I introduced earlier, is Japan Central Rail. They have the Shinkansen 700 that you saw the picture of. So we're bringing in world-class partners into this, and then the private sector stepping up to fund it.
Since you are going to be elevated train,
Yeah.
why don't you use I-45?
Yeah, good question. Since we're elevating the track, the question is, why don't we use the I-45 corridor? And I-45 is actually one of the lines on the map. So it's been under study. And that everybody thought would be the initial route, would be to go, you know, right in the center of that. A couple of things. First of all, when you're running it, when I-45 was designed, it was not contemplated for 200-mile-an-hour speeds. And so that sounds a little bit interesting, but when you're running a train at 200 miles an hour, you have different alignments than I-45. And so automatically the alignments didn't mesh. But even a bigger problem than that was that I-45 has developed so much that it's almost cost prohibitive to go along I-45. Even with it elevated, that it would interrupt a lot of people that have put their cities and homes along there. So it was almost better just to be adjacent to it. So I can't tell you exactly where the alignment will be, but it will be in this zone. This is an infrastructure zone. I-45, Burlington Northern Rail, which all these townships and villages originated from the rail before there was a highway, there was rail. And then there's this high power grid, and so we'll be in there somewhere because again, we are an electric train. But I'm going to guess I-45 probably doesn't make the cut. I'll guess that.
Will there be any issue of eminent domain?
Question that had to do with is there going to be challenges with eminent domain? That actually has been one of the questions raised by opponents to this initiative. They've said, well, how do you know that you've got the power of eminent domain? And it's an interesting question because we are a rail company. Texas Central Partners is bringing in Japan Central Rail. And so it's almost like our opponents are saying, well, you only have eminent domain for the incumbent providers. You know, if you're coming in to compete or bring another new rail, then you don't have that power. Well, that's not Texas. You know, we're about free enterprise and a free market, but that's the argument they're trying to use on us. We're choosing not to use eminent domain except as a very last resort. So when we go to the landowners, we're already in the process of making offers on options on their land. And we're having very, very good success. And why is that? Because we're going in as a good neighbor, and we know that we would rather give the landowner the money above market value rather than pay the attorneys. And so landowners are very happy. And they're not really, it's not a new discussion to them because remember, they're right here along I-45, the Burlington Northern and the high power grid, and they're in an infrastructure zone. So it's not a new conversation. But they're very, very happy because we're offering more than the power companies, we're offering more than the pipeline companies. We're really giving them significant value above the market for the options. If they choose to, when they take an option, if we decide not to ever build the project, they keep the money. So if the project goes forward, then they go ahead and they've agreed to sell us piece
Without the
of
alignment, how you would talk of that?
Pardon?
Without the alignment.
The question is, without the alignment, how can you talk about acquisition of land? Good question. There are several lines on the map, and so there's. I don't know the strategy, but they're going ahead and buying strategic parcels. So, yeah. But when the alignment's formalized, we'll know more about how to finalize the acquisition. Yes, sir.
Price of the ticket will be cheaper than the plane ticket.
The price. The question is, will the price of the train be cheaper than the plane? I don't know. I don't know because my guess is going to be competitive. I think what you're going to see Texas Central Partners, they want to price it so it gets you out of your car. That's their goal, and they're going to be competing. But the carriers today, we're not really competing with the air carriers because by and large they're not doing the short haul, and they want to do less of the short haul. They prefer to do the long haul. They make more money doing the long haul. So it's not really a market they're so excited about anyway. And if we come along, it might give them a reason to convert some of their short haul to long haul. They have that. They only have so many spaces at the airport. So I think it will be very, very competitive. But at the same time, I'm not sure we're competing.
Any estimate on the product? How many cars will be displaced by this project? Is there any projection?
The question is how many cars will be displaced by this conveyance system, by the high speed? Well, the answer probably is somewhere in this area for those of you who do math. We have 400 seats we can run 400 seats every 30 minutes. How many cars is that? That's a lot of cars. I don't know. The answer is a lot of cars. But even with that, we're going to have to build more lanes on I-45. The good news is we don't have to build a Katy freeway on I-45. Katy freeway is the biggest highway in America. And nobody wants to build another Katy freeway because it costs a lot of money and it takes so much land. So imagine I-45 doesn't have to be the Katy freeway because now we can bring 400 seats every 30 minutes. And those are seats that are leaving Houston going to Dallas, and those are seats from Dallas coming to Houston. So we can run basically 800 seats each time we move the train northbound and southbound.
You know, people in Houston have been living and drinking on oil, so how much effect it's going to have on the oil industry?
Oh, the question is, with Houston being oil dependent, will this have an impact on them? I think with us going from 27 million to 40 million in population, there's going to be a lot of gasoline sold. There's still going to be this is still an automobile state because there's just going to be such a high density. I remember the senator, they talked about the senator in the 60s, and he went to California, and he came back to Washington, D.C., and they stuck a microphone in his face, and they said, "Senator, what do you think about California?" He said, "I saw the future, and I don't like it." And, I think if we think about what does the future look like for Houston, well, we're most similar to Los Angeles than any other city in America. That's the challenge Metro faces every day. That's the challenge we face as motorists, that we have so much land and we're so spread out. So there's no question we're dependent upon the automobile and gasoline. We just don't have to use the automobile to go to Dallas. So that's the good news, is that this high-speed conveyance can help us, and it also brings the economies together in a very robust way. Is there time for one more question?
Yeah.
Naresh, one more question? Yes, sir.
How many tracks do you have? Only one?
The question is how many tracks? There's 2 tracks. So you'll have one northbound, one southbound, but then they just alternate. So there are 2 tracks that are co-located. One of the slides showed it, and we'll leave the slideshow. If Naresh wants to, he can send it to all the membership. You can have a copy of it. But it gives you a picture of having the 2 tracks on the elevated area. But that allows for 400 seats going north and 400 seats coming south at the same time, and 2 tracks. We never shared the track with any other carrier. Safety. So again, this conveyance system's been operating for half a century, never an accident, never any death. It's extremely safe. I'll add this one last thing about the zone. The zone, we talk about safety. So for federal safety guidelines, we do have to make sure that if in the remote chance there's an accident, we have the ability to have first responders that are equipped. So guess what is so really amazing about our project? We go into the communities along the zone. We have a chance to work with them to upgrade their ambulance service and their firefighting service and provide them with new equipment and training. So if you're in a rural community along this zone, and you've been having a bake sale to raise enough money to put a nozzle on a fire hose, we're going to come in and give you a new fire truck and training, because we have to have that just in the remote case that we ever needed it. We want that new fire truck and best practices there to take care of our passengers. Same way with the ambulance. That's pretty nice, isn't it? That the first responder community is going to enjoy having this zone of high-speed train. The train, nobody asked this question. I thought it might come up. What's the noise like? What's the noise like? Okay, so first of all, it's not a heavy freight train. You know how freight trains have that vibration?
Yep.
And you can just you can really, in your heart, you can feel a freight train going by. This train is light. It doesn't have that weight to it, and each one of the cars has an engine in it, so the weight's dispersed. And you're running at 200 miles an hour, so the sound is 4 seconds long. and they say it's about like a hairdryer for 4 seconds. 4 seconds. So that's why we know that livestock probably are going to enjoy getting used. I mean, they'll get used to that just like that, and they'll use the overhead as part of their shelter. And we'll all get used to that sound because it's less than what I live next to. I live next to 59. I hear the roar of 59 all the time, so I mean, but I've gotten used to it. You know, when I notice that there's no sound there, it's when there is an ice day and the city gets shut down. I go, what's wrong? There's no, oh yeah, 59 shut down. Otherwise, you know, I'm just like, it's just like, but this is 4 seconds. Every 30 minutes, you might hear 4 seconds. A hairdryer kind of, oh yeah, that was trained. So that's why we're excited about the technology. God bless you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mosley. Please give a big round of applause. It's a very interesting concept and hope this project goes forward. Good luck with that. Also, I'm excited to announce that ASI will be endorsing this project. So we're going to send an official endorsement to you very soon. Thank you. And also, this is not a sponsored event, so if any of our corporate sponsors or anybody, if you want to underwrite the program, you can do that. So that we're going to publish it in the newspapers, and also in the endorsement we're going to mention that.
That's awesome.
Also, I have a small program right now with one of our eminent members, Mr. Sam Kanapan. We want to recognize him for his achievements, so I would like to request our Vice President, Mr. Dinesh Shah, to speak some words.
Well, Sam Kanapan is a well-known name in Houston and Texas since 1968. Almost every engineer, every professional, and every Indo-American knows Sam Kanapan. He is a president and professional mechanical engineer of ABI Enterprise Incorporated. He is an active member of Society of Piping Engineers, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASIE, Asia Society, and many more. He is an author and dedicated community volunteer. He is very active in Meenakshi Temple. He is the recipient of many awards, including a recent award of Lifetime Achievement from Hindus of Greater Houston. Texas former Governor Rick Perry appointed Sam Kanapan to the Texas Professional Engineers Board from 2012 to 2017. He was recently appointed as a Vice Chair for TBP. Please join me to congratulate Sam Kanapan. As a token of appreciation and recognition of your community service and professional service, we would like to present this certificate of recognition.
And also, I would like to add, this program is coordinated by Mr. Sam Kanapan. So thank you for this wonderful programs.
I have a presentation for Sam.
Oh.
And I also wanted to present to Sam his very own Texas Central coffee cup. A special occasion.
Now I can drink coffee when I'm going to train. Thank you.
Also, one more from ASI also.
I drink a lot of coffee.
Now, I would like to request our past president, Sanjay Ram, to give a token of appreciation to Mr. Mosley.
Now, I can't
stand here and not say a few words, so I'm going to take the liberty and say this. You saw him make a difference in Denton County at the governor's office, at the Greater Houston Partnership, at the Texas Transportation Commission, and now the single largest infrastructure project in the state. And that's something.
Thank you, Maya.
One more. Also come from ASI.
Okay, Maya.
I think you were too handsome for it. There we go.
Thank you.
I just want to talk to you for a minute. As you all know, when I came to Texas and to Houston, 1968, we had only 100 students at the University of Houston and 6 working families. 5 of them worked in the Lockheed for NASA. One of them worked for TA in Missouri City. That's all the whole population. Now we have more than 150,000 Indians. And with all the growth, they are very much respected now. In the early years, they used to ask me, do you have pump in India? Do you this like that? But now, with IT, all that, they are respected very much. We need to take advantage of this window, make use of it and serve our back home, mother country, where we got our education, and then we came here, and also America, where we grew up, and our children are here, grandchildren are here. So please, focus on the future and make good use of these opportunities in this country. Thank you very much.
I just mention one thing. For the first time ever, the United States Postal Service, you all get ready to celebrate the Diwali event.
Yes.
The U.S. Postal Service is going to launch a Diwali stamp.
Yes.
Now there is relevance because about 11 years back or 12 years back, Sam Kanapan had convinced the U.S. Postal Service offices in Texas to issue a, for those of y'all that are 30 years or younger and don't know what snail mail is, they issue me a time when you can take an envelope to the post office and they'll write it for you, they'll stamp it for you.
Right.
And he was able to get a Diwali stamp made for use at U.S. postal locations in Texas, and now, thanks to the trailblazing efforts, now the U.S. Postal Service is issuing the stamp.
Very good.
I would like to request the treasurer Sai to give the word of thanks.
Thanks, Naresh. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sai Gautami Assam, current treasurer of ASIE. Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank Mr. Jeff Mosley for taking your time and giving us more specifics on the project that's hopefully goes forward. We are so excited. The very thought of going to Dallas in less than 30 minutes kind of sold me, because we do spend more than 30 minutes in day-to-day traffic. That's the first thing I noticed after moving to Houston. I did, remember those days where I spent at least 90 minutes to and fro commuting from work. So that kind of, it's a very interesting, very big project, but hey, we are in Texas. Everything is big in Texas. So, we hope it goes forward. And thank you so much for your time and being our guest speaker tonight. I would also like to thank Mr. Sam Kanapan for being our for giving support to the organization and giving us the encouragement always. And thank you, sir. And thank you also for coordinating with Mr. Mosley for making this event the meeting grand success tonight. After that, I would like to thank all the ASIE members, life members, student, annual, and all the volunteers who help us move forward and help us grow. Without your support, we cannot, we wouldn't have been able to be in this position tonight or today. Thank you so much for your encouragement and support. I would also like to thank, at the end of the day, every meeting is successful only because of a team effort by the board of directors. I would like to thank all the board of directors and volunteers for taking time to make this meeting a grand success tonight. And also, we have few media people tonight in the house, in the room. Dr. NIK NIKAM, who has been actually videotaping all the events tonight. Thank you, sir. And he also did a show with a few ASIE engineers, and that will be available on our website soon. That will be posted on our website. And we also have Seshadri Kumar from India Herald, and a few other media people, Indo-American News and Voice of Asia, who have been helping us do our publicity and also help us grow in the greater Houston area. And before we leave tonight, I would like to remind you of the scholarship program that's coming up, and also the Diwali event and the holiday event that's coming up in November. Thank you so much for all your support, and God bless you, and be safe and drive home safe. Good night. Thank you.